The winter of 1944 arrives early in Lorraine. A wet, bone-chilling cold that finds every gap in a uniform and never leaves. The men of Third Army have been living in it for weeks now, sleeping in waterlogged foxholes, eating cold rations with numb fingers, watching their breath freeze on the muzzles of their rifles. They had chased the Germans across France in sunshine and glory. Now they are paying the bill. Metz squats in front of them like a stone spider, legs spread across both banks of the Moselle. From the air, it looks almost peaceful: church spires, red roofs. The river sliding past until you notice the black scars of forts ringing the city, like beads on a necklace of death. 43 of them. Some are half-buried hills of earth and grass. Others are low, evil shapes of gray concrete bristling with retractable gun turrets that disappear the moment a spotter plane flies over. Between the forts stretch flooded meadows, minefields, dragon's teeth tank traps, and wire so thick it takes 2 men with cutters 10 minutes to open a single lane. The Germans have had 74 years to perfect this ground. They use the time well. Patton stands on a forward hill one gray morning in late September, field glasses pressed to his eyes, ivory-handled revolvers gleaming at his hips. His breath steams. Behind him, his staff wait in silence. They have learned not to speak until spoken to when the old man is in this mood. Intelligence says the place is held by cooks and clerks. He growls. His G2 Colonel Koch clears his throat. That's what the prisoners told us, sir. The 462nd Volksgrenadier, mostly older men and boys, a few SS cadres to stiffen them. Maybe 20,000 total. Patton lowers the glasses. 20,000 grandfathers and schoolboys sitting on the strongest forts in Europe. Fine, we'll kick their asses before lunch. They try. God, how they try. The first river crossings are massacres. Men of the 90th Division pile into assault boats under a moon bright enough to read a newspaper. Halfway across, searchlights snap on cold white fingers, stabbing down from forts no one knew were manned. Machine guns begin their sewing machine chatter. Tracers float lazily across the black water, then suddenly whip into red hornets. Boats capsize. Men drown under the weight of their own equipment. Bodies drift downstream, toward the Rhine like pale logs. On the far bank, the survivors crawl forward through knee-deep mud and run into something new. Flamethrower bunkers. Hidden nozzles squirt liquid fire, 30 yards. Men turn into running torches, screaming until the flames eat the air from their lungs. Patton watches the far bank through his glasses and says nothing for a long time. Then, very quietly, those aren't cooks. Fort Driant becomes his obsession. It sits 5 miles southwest of the city, a low hill shaped like a sleeping boar. From a distance it looks harmless. Grass, a few trees, some concrete pimples. Up close, it is a different animal. The main ditch is 40 feet deep, faced with brick, filled with wire and water. Above it rises a wall of earth and concrete 12 feet thick. Inside are casemates for 150mm guns, revolving steel cupolas for machine guns, underground barracks that sleep 600, electric generators, a hospital, wells, bakeries, telephone, exchanges, everything. A small town needs to live forever while killing anything that comes near. September 27th, the biggest airstrike Third Army has ever called in. 36 P-47s rolling low, one after another, dropping 1,000-pounders and tanks of napalm. The explosions merge into one continuous roar. The ground jumps like a living thing. A sergeant watching from 3 miles away swears he sees the entire hill lift 6 inches into the air. When the smoke settles, Driant is still there. A few fresh craters, a couple of trees on fire, nothing else. Artillery follows. 195th Field Artillery Battalion, 155mm long toms, 8-inch howitzers, even a battery of 240mm monsters borrowed from First Army. For 6 straight hours, they fired 10 rounds a minute. The noise is physical. It punches men in the chest. Shells arrive screaming, burst in orange-black flowers. Dust and pulverized concrete drift across the valley like yellow snow. At the end of it, observers with high-powered scopes can see fresh chips in the concrete. That is all. 5 o'clock. The infantry goes in. Company E, 11th Infantry Regiment, 5th Division. 214 men step off. 54 come back, whole. The rest are dead, dying, or screaming for medics in the gathering dark. A lieutenant with half his face shot away is heard repeating over and over, "They were waiting. They were waiting, the whole time." The next day Patton drives to the front himself, standing in his open jeep like a Roman general, scarf flapping. He tells the survivors, "We are going to take that fort if I have to pick it up and carry it back to Nancy in my hands." For 13 days the battle for Driant becomes a separate war. Americans worm their way into the outer ditch, blowholes with Bangalore torpedoes, crawl through wire under fire that never stops. A platoon reaches the top of the casemate roof and clings there, turning craters into foxholes. Below them, Germans pop out of hidden doors like murderous jack-in-the-boxers, fire a burst, and vanish again. Flamethrower teams squirt liquid fire down ventilation shafts and listen to the screams echo inside the hill. On the 5th day, a runner reaches battalion with a scrap of paper written in pencil. "We are out of water, ammo low, half the men hit. Germans still coming up the tunnels. Tell the colonel I don't think we can hold another day. Capt. Jack, Gary, Co-E. The next morning, the position is overrun. Only 8 Americans walk out. October 9th, Patton gathers his corps and division commanders in a freezing schoolhouse. Maps cover every wall. Coffee tastes of chicory and defeat. We're not gaining anything except cemetery plots. Major General Mantonetti says flatly, my regiments are down to battalion strength. The men are calling Driant the meat grinder. Patton stares at the map for a long time. Then he does something his staff has never seen. He takes off his helmet, runs a hand through his gray hair, and says, pull them out, blow everything we can't carry. We'll come back when we're ready. The retreat is carried out in a cold drizzle. Engineers plant 6,000 pounds of TNT and walk away. At 0400, the charges go off. For a moment, Driant is lit from within by orange fire, like a jack-o'-lantern. Then darkness swallows it again. The fortress has won. In London, Churchill is handed the latest intercept. He reads it twice, lays it down, and stares out at the blackout curtains. Gentlemen, he says at last, you will never know what war really is until you fight Germans in a place they have prepared. He is not gloating. He is remembering Gallipoli, the Somme Passchendaele places where courage ran into concrete and drowned. But Patton is not finished. Winter hardens, the mud freezes into knife-edged ruts. Eisenhower, swallowing his irritation at Montgomery's failed gamble in Holland, finally releases the supplies Third Army has been begging for since August, trains grown into Nancy, loaded with shells, bridges, bulldozers, winter coats, and the biggest guns in the American arsenal. Patton spends October planning like a man possessed. Every captured German map is pored over, every prisoner is interrogated about water pipes, power cables, sewer lines, aerial photographs are studied until eyes ache. Engineers practice reducing mock casemates behind the lines. Infantry rehearse crossing flooded rivers under smoke. Even the chaplains are roped in to carry ammunition. November 8 dawns iron gray and still. No trumpet charges this time. Instead, 3 full divisions 5th, 90th, 95th begin a slow, deliberate dance around the fortress belt. They do not attack the forts, they ignore them. They slip between them, behind them, around them, like fingers closing into a fist. Tanks wallow through mud so deep that crews have to lay logs under the tracks. Infantrymen wade waist-deep in icy water, rifles held overhead. Engineers throw bridges across the Moselle in the middle of the night while artillery pounds empty fields 5 miles away to keep German listeners guessing. One by one, the supply roads into Metz are cut. Telephone lines are snipped. Power stations are done. The great ring of forts wakes up to discover it is no longer a ring but 43 separate tombs. Inside Driant, the garrison hears the distant thunder moving away, then closer from another direction, then silence. Their radios bring only static. Food runs low, then ammunition, then hope. On November 17th, the encirclement is complete. Metz is an island in a sea of olive drab. Street fighting in the city itself is brutal but brief. American artillery has learned every church steeple the Germans use as observation posts. One by one, the steeples come down. Shermans with 76mm guns nose into alleys and blast cellars at point-blank range. Flamethrower tanks squirt fire through windows until entire blocks burn like torches. November 22nd. A patrol from the 95th Division kicks open the door of an underground hospital on Isle Chambir and finds the German commander, General Heinrich Kittel, lying on a cot with his head bandaged. He looks up, surprised, almost relieved. "Es ist vorbei," he whispers. It is over. Still, the forts refuse to die. For 3 more weeks, the siege grinds on. Methodical now, almost gentle in its cruelty. American gunners register on a single embrasure and fire until the concrete peels away in slabs. Engineers crawl forward at night with 600-pound satchel charges on long poles and drop them down ventilation shafts. Water pipes are cut. Electric cables are severed. Loudspeakers are brought up and play jazz music all night to keep the defenders awake. One by one, the garrisons give in. Some come out fighting and die to the last man. Most simply appear at hidden doors, pale as mushrooms, hands raised, eyes blinking against a sun they haven't seen in weeks. December 6th, Fort Driant. A cold, clear morning. The American colonel commanding the siege battalion watches through binoculars as a German officer climbs out of a ditch, white flag tied to a broom handle. Behind him come the rest 312 men, unshaven, filthy, uniforms hanging loose on frames, starved thin. They stack their rifles like cordwood and sit down in the frozen grass, waiting for whatever comes next. The colonel walks forward alone. The German salutes stiffly. "You held this position longer than any army in history." The American says. The German shrugs. "We had no choice." Later, when the Americans finally enter the casemates, they understand why Driant was impossible in September. The walls are thicker than anyone guessed, 15, 20 feet in places. Entire rooms collapsed by direct hits from 240mm shells are still passable. In one magazine they find 150mm shells stacked like firewood, enough to fight for another month if supplies had reached them. In the deepest level, they discover something that silences even the toughest sergeants, a handwritten diary left on a table. The last entry, dated December 5th, reads, "We can hear the Americans walking overhead. They are singing. We have no more food. The children in Metz must be very hungry by now. Perhaps it is time." December 13th, the final fort surrenders. The Battle of Metz is over. Third Army's losses: 29,000 men killed, wounded, missing more than the entire Marine Corps lost on Iwo Jima. German prisoners: 47,200 from the fortress zone alone, plus thousands more in the open field. An entire army group has vanished into POW cages. Patton stands on the same hill where he watched the first failed assaults. The ivory revolvers are dull with mud now. He looks at the silent forts, the burned-out tanks, the white crosses marching across the fields, and says very quietly to no one in particular, "We paid the bill. Now we own the store." That night, he writes in his diary, "Metz was the toughest nut we ever cracked. It took 3 months, 30,000 casualties, and every ounce of ingenuity we had. But we learned something the Germans never did. No fortress is impregnable if you are willing to pay the price and refuse to go away." In London, Churchill raises a glass of champagne to the portrait of his ancestor, the Duke of Marlborough. "The Americans," he says, with a weary grin, "have just proven that even the gates of hell will open if you knock long enough and hard enough." Then he adds, almost as an afterthought, "And God help the next bastard who tries to hide behind concrete from George Patton." Somewhere, far behind the lines, the guns fall silent at last. The fortress that defied Caesar, Attila, and 3 centuries of French kings has fallen to a tall American general with a squeaky voice and the coldest eyes in the world. The spine is broken. The road to Germany lies open. And winter, for the first time in months, feels a little less cold.